Hi, so in this video I thought I would talk about basically my experience with psychosis, in particular my experience with religious psychosis. I don't really know why I decided to talk about this topic tonight because it's probably the most difficult topic there is for me to discuss. It was really traumatic. I really have no idea why I decided to do it tonight. I don't know if it's because mentally I've been actually having a pretty good few days, so maybe this is like the best time to do it. But yeah, I thought I would tell you about what it was like for me. And yeah, it was in the summer of when I was 15. It was my first psychotic break, and it's kind of like the incident that really betrays how serious my mental health issues are. That's the thing that made me get really concerned about it, because I was completely debilitated by this psychotic episode. So for some context, my father became extremely hardcore fundamentalist, he became a fundamentalist Christian when I was 14. It was probably the worst thing that happened to me. It kind of ruined my life when he became that way. And so because he is a fundamentalist Christian, he kind of really drilled that belief into my head to the point where he completely brainwashed me. And I'm not saying that lightly. I mean, he literally programmed my brain through hours and hours and hours and hours of just screaming at me about the Bible and shit like that. And for a very long period of time. And as a kid, your mind doesn't really have the fortitude to withstand something like that. So eventually his tactics got to me, and I started subscribing to that same belief system. So I became really religious. I think it was really in large parts a survival mechanism, because if I didn't agree with what my father was saying, my life would continue to be a living hell, because he would torment me about this religion stuff that I didn't agree with so often, to such an extreme that I guess I just couldn't take it anymore, and my mind kind of gave in to all the pressure that it was under. It was about a little bit less than a year that I had been living this type of lifestyle where all I would do is read the Bible. All I would do is watch preaching videos and things like that for hours every single day. I did nothing else. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't leave the house. I wasn't in school at that time, so I didn't see anybody. I had no friends. I had cut off ties with all of my friends, and yeah. So it was kind of just all I was exposed to was these radical beliefs, and that's all I would think about was religion and the topics associated with it. And I was obsessed with the concept of sin and going to hell, because it's really just a fear-based belief system. I mean, the reason why you believe in it and the reason why you follow that path is because you're afraid of what the consequences may be. And I was really afraid of the consequence of going to hell, because my father had literally trained me to be terrified of this concept. So that was all I thought about. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I was 16. It's all incredibly hazy. I've blocked out so much of that period, or pretty much my entire life, but especially that period of my life. I've blocked 90% of it out. So that was kind of what my life consisted of. Everything was about Christianity. I didn't watch anything other than that. I didn't read about anything other than that. I didn't listen to anything about other than that. I mean, I had no other interests. I even stopped all of my hobbies. I gave up everything that I loved. I didn't paint anymore. I didn't write anymore. I didn't read the things I love to read anymore. I literally got rid of all my hobbies and completely devoted myself to this lifestyle. And it's kind of a thing that a true Christian doesn't have mental issues, because God fixed all that for you. If you're saved, you're not going to have mental health issues. So all the mental health issues that I had been struggling with up until that point, I just suppressed them. Completely suppressed them, because I thought that that wasn't something that I could feel. That wasn't something I could experience. So I thought that I had no choice but to do that. So all of this was just bottling up, and all of this suppression and oppression and all of these toxic beliefs were just festering inside of me, and all of this just festered and festered and festered, and unbeknownst to me, it was really taking a massive toll on my mental health. And I guess one day it just, all the stress and everything that I didn't even realize I was under just kind of reached a breaking point, really. Yeah, things went really wrong. It's like a really, it's difficult for me to even think about it. I'm literally sitting here sweating at the mere thought of what I went through, because it was hell on earth. I didn't really know that a person's mind can torture you in such a way. I didn't even know it was possible for one's own mind to absolutely destroy you. I mean, I can't express how horrible it was. I remember one day I had been really wanting to have a hobby, because like I said, I gave up all of my hobbies. So I thought, okay, well, a godly thing to do is get into sewing. You know, there's nothing morally wrong about sewing, because everything else was wrong. Everything else was sinful. Painting, writing, drawing, everything was sinful. I couldn't do anything. Couldn't watch anything. I couldn't listen to any type of music except Christian music or classical music. So I really just needed an outlet for all of my creativity. So I wanted to get into sewing. So I remember me and my father, we went to Walmart to buy some material and like some sewing supplies and stuff. And I remember it was, I think it's the first time I ever heard this voice, and this voice has stayed with me till this day, like 7 or so years later, or however fucking long it's been, 6 years later, almost. I remember I was looking at these materials, and they had, like, you know, patterns on it, like flowers or like teddy bears or things like that. They had that printed on it, and it was just like this clear voice, clear as day, just rang through my mind and silenced everything else. It was like everything about me just pinpoint focus on what this voice was saying. In the 10 Commandments, there's a commandment that says, "Thou shalt not make any graven images." And I remember this voice told me, well, isn't any image a graven image? And it literally, as soon as I heard that, as soon as the voice said that to me, it was like my entire world just became, like, just started to like distort, and just completely fell apart. It felt like I was stuck in the middle of a tornado or something, and everyone was just being blown apart as like this fucking revelation struck me. And I was like, oh my fucking God, that's true. Everything must be a graven image. And as soon as this voice, and it's still like this, as soon as it tells me anything, that's absolute truth. It is like a God that controls my reality, and anything that it says is real. It's reality for me, period. So I, period, believed it. This was truth. And, I know now that it's a delusion, after the fact. But at the time, I had no idea about any of this. I was completely clueless about what was happening to me and didn't even realize that anything was wrong until way too late. So this delusion just took hold of me, and I was like, everything is a graven image. And so then it always starts with something like that, and then it just devolves. The delusion becomes so much more intricate and complex, and it takes this complete life of its own and completely hijacks my life to the point where it's debilitating. So that devolved into, well, I can't own anything with an image on it. So I literally went through all these, this fucking craziness where, I couldn't have, pictures, or I couldn't use the TV, I couldn't use my phone, I couldn't use anything with an image on it. I had to get rid of everything with any type of image on it, like a picture or like a recreation of life. And then that went on for a while, and then it went to, well, letters are graven images then. And then that literally was earth-shattering, because if you can't have anything with letters on it, and you can't make letters, then you can't write. You can't buy water because the label has letters on it. I mean, it got so intense. I literally couldn't do anything. And then it would cite Bible verses to me, this voice. So it cited the Bible verse that talks about, thou shalt not touch the unclean thing, or else you will be unclean and I won't accept you, basically. You'll go to hell, basically. And that voice told me that it was literal. So if graven images are bad, so letters in any form of picture at all, then they're unclean. So if I touch it, then that makes me unclean, and I'm going to hell if I touch this letter or anything that has letters. And then I couldn't touch labels, couldn't touch doorknobs, couldn't touch the wood floor because, it has prints of words on the back of it, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And then I thought, I can't touch anything that's touched anything that has letters on it or pictures on it. So then if I had drank water out of a water bottle, the water touched the water bottle, and the water bottle touched the label, which has letters on it, which is a graven image. So then I was like, I couldn't drink anything. And then if I had drank water and not realized it, then the water that had touched the water bottle, that had touched the label, that had letters on it, the water had touched my spit. So that means that I couldn't touch my spit. So I would literally sit there for hours with spit in my mouth because I couldn't swallow it. But I didn't, for some reason, I couldn't spit it out either. I don't remember exactly the reason why I couldn't, because I literally couldn't think rationally. My mind did not work. My thoughts were so disorganized that I literally couldn't even think. And I would get stuck in bathrooms and stuff because I would realize the voice would tell me, well, you can't touch the doorknob or else you're going to hell. And it was I knew that if I did these things that I would go to hell. And I knew this with a certainty that a rational person will never experience, because it's a type of certainty, the type of utter assurance that something is going to happen, or that this thing is going to happen, that is completely and utterly irrational. It defies reason. I was sure that I had to do these things or else I would go to hell. I mean, it got to the point where the air would touch things that had pictures on it, right? So I would hold my breath. I thought I couldn't breathe. And I didn't know what to do. And that was like the big thing. And when you kind of talk about it and when you hear it spoken about out loud, it kind of, I think it's hard to grasp how debilitating this is. But I could not eat. I would go days without being able to eat. I could not drink anything. I couldn't even drink out of the tap because, the pipes, they have like, engravings on it. So, to like numbers or shit like that. So, I couldn't drink out of the tap either. I would sit there and hold my breath. I would literally sit there until spit was pooling out of my mouth because I could not swallow it. I thought for certain that if I swallowed it, I would go to hell. I mean, with a certainty that I can't explain it to you. I was certain of it. I was so sure, and I was so afraid because I was so sure. I mean, imagine like having a gun in your hands and having no choice but to pull the trigger, but you know that there's a bullet in the gun. You know that the gun is going to kill you. That type of nauseating, gut-wrenching, heart-crushing, like dizzying, like makes you want to pass out fear. You know people that get so scared that they pass out? It's like that. The most extreme form of fear that you can imagine. I felt that terror when I had to take a breath of air. Think about how many times you have to breathe a day. And you can't just hold your breath forever. So eventually I'd have to take a breath, right? Or I would have to drink water. Or I would try and tell myself, or my father would try and tell me, no, you can drink the water. And I'd be like, I would try to overcome it, and I would try to not listen to what the voice was telling me. So I'd be like, no, this is ridiculous. I'm going to drink the water. And for a split second, I would be like, okay, I can drink the water. And I'd take the sip. And immediately upon taking the sip, it's like it all just came crushing upon me again. And just completely flattened me. And just took hold. It was like I was possessed. It took complete control of my body and my mind to the point where it wasn't even my own anymore. I couldn't think clearly. I didn't have control over myself anymore. And then I was certain. I would be certain. That's it. I just committed a sin. I committed a knowing sin, which means I'm going to hell. No ifs, ands, or buts. There's nothing I can do. This isn't the type of thing you can repent from. So I'm going to hell. And so then it was literally like being told you're being executed the next day or whatever. That certainty that you're going to meet your doom. And I would go into full-blown screaming, like couldn't see. Everything went black. Panic attacks. Because I knew that I had just thrown my eternity away, and I was going to be horrifically tortured for the rest of eternity. And I knew this had happened. I had just done this to myself. I had just condemned myself. And I would fall into the deepest sort of despair that you can imagine. I don't think that there is any form of despair that is comparable to wholeheartedly believing and knowing that there is absolutely no hope for you and that you are going to be in unimaginable pain for eternity, for the rest of time. When you die, you're going to be in unimaginable pain. And that's what the voice told me would happen. And I really thought that. And so it literally, like, couldn't even get up in the morning, couldn't even do anything. I mean, this utter hopelessness and just desolation. It literally, talking about it, there will never be words that will be able to explain what it was like. And then And then it was like a switch flipped, and I was like, wait, no. I would sit there for hours, and I'd be like, no, this can't be true, this can't be happening. I'd be in complete denial about it. And I'd be like, no, I couldn't, that can't be true. I can't be going to hell for this. Like, there must be something I can do. I must be wrong somehow. And then I would kind of talk myself out of it, and I'd be like, okay, no, I didn't. Everything's fine. Because of this and this and this was true about the circumstance. I didn't do this, so I'm fine. And then I would do something else, like I would touch a doorknob, or I would put on clothes that had labels on them, and then the whole cycle would start all over again. So every single day, sometimes dozens of times a day, I would do something, just living, just functioning, literally just surviving, like drinking or eating or touching the floor. I thought that my feet couldn't touch the floor, or just being in a house, or just wearing clothes. I mean, just the most basic things. Breathing. I would just breathe, and then I would be told by this voice, and whatever this voice says is absolute, undeniable, irrefutable fact, until I gain enough control over my own mind to deny it. But multiple, sometimes dozens of times a day, I would wholeheartedly believe that I had condemned myself to an eternity of suffering where the worm never dies and shit like that. You know, all that horrific shit that's in the Bible about hell. I was absolutely certain that I had condemned myself to that multiple times a day. So multiple times a day, it's like receiving a death sentence multiple times a day, and then finding out that it was just a joke, or that you were wrong, that it wasn't really a death sentence, and then just getting another death sentence. And I was so out of my mind, I had no grip on reality, that every time it was like the first time. Like, I couldn't even distinguish a pattern in it. I couldn't even be like, okay, well, this is the 20th time today that I've apparently done something that will sentence me to eternal damnation. You know, this. I mean, I can't be sentenced to hell 25 times a day, can I? I mean, just once and it's done, you know, like, it can't happen over and over again. But I couldn't see that. I couldn't recognize that. I was so out of touch that I couldn't even see that. So every single time, it was like the first time. And every single time, it was exactly the same. The exact same amount of despair and terror. I mean, terror. The type of terror that makes people like almost die of heart attacks. I mean, the most extreme fear that a person can feel. The type of fear that absolutely destroys you and makes it so that you can't do anything at all because you're so terrified. Every single day. Almost, sometimes it would be every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes. And it would just happen over and over and over. I mean, hundreds of times. It's like I keep drawing this analogy, but it's like receiving a death sentence for the first time hundreds of times a day. But it's not even like, you know, oh, you're going to have a lethal injection. Imagine something like you're going to be ripped limb from limb until you die. Like that kind of death sentence. Imagine receiving news like that. And imagine the terror and fear you would feel. And then multiply that by about 200, if not more. And then imagine experiencing that every single day, sometimes 30 times a day. Maybe there might have been times where it was more. Over and over and over. For months. I mean, everything that I did, everything, even down to breathing, or drinking, or eating, or wearing clothes, or just being in my house, just literally living, just surviving, just being alive, was a sin, and the penalty for that was unimaginable suffering for the rest of eternity once I die. And imagine being told this sometimes every second of the day. Sometimes there would be days where, like, every single second of the day that voice was talking to me, it would not shut up. I mean, every second. So imagine hearing someone say the most horrific things to you every second of the day for months and months and months, and just being absolutely tortured. I've mentioned this in another video, but I would rather, and I mean this with every fiber of my being, I would rather be physically tortured every second of every day than go through that again. The pain, the mental pain and torture was worse than any physical pain that I think can be felt. And I've been in a lot of pain. A lot of it. I know what it's like to be in a lot of pain. And I would rather have that any second, any time. I would rather have that. I can't even express. Words fail to express what it was like. So I would be having multiple panic attacks a day, and I couldn't eat. I was so terrified every second of the day that I was physically ill. The type of stress that physically destroys your body. So I was sick, and I didn't have any connection to the outside world. I didn't have any friends. The only family I really have is my father, and my father would just tell me that basically I wasn't being a Christian the right way, and that, you know, either it was Satan trying to get me to stray from the path or whatever, or it was a trial sent by God to strengthen my faith, or what the fuck ever. I thought it was a problem with me, and I thought that I was doing something wrong, and that if I just do better, then it won't be like this anymore. I was literally debilitated in every sense of the word. I mean this. It literally destroyed me and destroyed my life and destroyed my ability to do anything, to take care of myself at all. At all. I mean, I'd literally be stuck in the bathroom for like 30 minutes because I couldn't work up the courage to touch the doorknob. I was constantly talking to this voice and arguing with it. I mean, all day long I would be arguing with this voice, because even though everything that it said was absolutely true, the part of me that was still sentient and free thinking enough to recognize that something was wrong with all of the completely insane. I mean, some of the things that it said were completely insane. Like I said, the breathing thing I think is probably the most insane thing. That I couldn't breathe. It literally told me I couldn't breathe or else I would go to hell. And I believed it, but there was a part of me that was sometimes still clear enough to think that this was wrong, that what this voice was saying can't be right. So I would literally, sometimes all day, argue with it and say, no, that's not right. And I would have to literally analyze every single little thing about what it was telling me, trying to come up with a good argument to disprove what it was saying, and to prove to myself that what it was saying wasn't true, because I still believed it. And I would kind of, like, there would be things where I would be like, no, this verse says that this doesn't mean that. So I'm fine. This isn't how it is. I can breathe. You know, it's okay if I breathe the air. Because this verse disproves whatever this voice is saying. And then it would quote another Bible verse to me that would completely disprove my argument. So that sweet moment of relief I got, knowing that, okay, you know, I can breathe. It's okay. I can breathe the air. I don't have to hold my breath until I pass out. I would just fall right back down that pit of just agony. And it would talk constantly. And there are times where it still talks constantly. And so, basically, because my father believes that going to any type of mental health professional is a sin, and that mental health isn't actually a thing, it's really just Satan tormenting you, so there's no such thing as mental illness. I didn't get any professional help. So it reached a point where I was going to die. It was going to kill me. It was literally ripping me apart. It was killing me. This thing. And it had gone on it went on in the most extreme form for about maybe 3 or 4 months straight, every second of the day. I couldn't sleep because it would talk all night, so I couldn't sleep at all. I would constantly obsess over this to the point where I could think of nothing else. I could do nothing else. I couldn't do anything. I wasn't even aware of my surroundings anymore, really, because I was so caught up in this obsession, obsessing over what this voice was telling me, that, I mean, I was literally dead to the world, and all that existed for me was this voice and the things that it was telling me. It got to the point where it was going to be the death of me, and I couldn't carry on that way anymore. So what I would do was, at the time, at the beginning, I thought it was kind of God's way of telling me that this was Satan that was tormenting me like this, because that's what I believed at the time. I didn't think it was like, you know, psychosis. I believed it was Satan. So I thought God's way of telling me I mean, it's literally talking to me about all this right now. But I thought that I should believe. I would get, like, I still get this, but it's kind of like a gut feeling when you know that something is right. And so I would try and disprove what the voice was saying, and I would, you know, kind of come up with a reason why what it was saying wasn't true. And then I would kind of get this gut feeling like, yeah, that's right. And so I thought that I had to trust that. And so I resolved it in my mind that I wouldn't believe anything else that this voice would say. And that if my gut feeling told me that the voice was wrong, that was it. No matter how much I wanted to stray into believing the voice again, no matter how convincing it was, no matter how much it deluded me, no matter how strong the delusion was, I decided, I made up my mind to always believe this gut instinct. And it took probably almost 2 years of basically conditioning myself to not believe the things it was telling me anymore. So I had to condition myself. I had to say it to myself. I had to say it to the voice over and over. You're lying. It's not true. You're a liar. You're lying. You're lying. It's not true. This is not true. This is not true. This is not true. I mean, probably thousands, if not near millions of times. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Constantly. I would sit there and I'm going to try and recreate it. So it would talk to me. I'd be like, no, you're wrong. No, 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 you're wrong. No, that's not true. You're wrong. You're lying. No, that's not true. That's not what the Bible says. No, no, this isn't true. No, no. That often. 4 hours. Sometimes I would verbally say it, but most times it would kind of all just be mental. 4 hours, I'd have to do that. Until it got to the point where I could detangle myself from the delusion enough to kind of not think about it anymore. And it took a really long time and a lot of fucking anguish and like time and effort and work to get to that point. At first I thought that, you know, I could still be a Christian and, you know, get over this, whatever it was, which now I know it was a psychotic break, but I thought that I could still kind of be in the faith and be able to recover from this, but any topic about religion and Christianity would just serve as a major trigger, and the voice would, you know, like torment me about it again. So for a really long time, like for years actually, any discussion of religion was such a trigger that in the end, which this is like the one good thing that came out of it, but in the end I knew that if I didn't decide to let go of this and to not care about, no matter how much mental abuse my dad would heap upon me because I decided not to be a Christian anymore, it's nothing, absolutely nothing compared to what I was going through and what I had been through, that I just had to make the decision in order to save myself that I could have nothing to do with that anymore. And so, yeah, for a few years after that, I still had to live with a man that his entire life, still to this day, centers entirely around religion. He thinks of nothing else, cares about nothing else, doesn't do anything else. Everything in his life is about religion and is to do with his religion. So, I mean, it was like literally living with constant trigger, and that was really, really fucking hard. So imagine someone screaming at you about religion. That is such a major trigger for you for years. So that really sucked a lot. And sucked is a major understatement. But, yeah, I kind of just had to cut all of that shit out. So now I literally can't read anything about it, can't listen to anything about it. Still, it's not as bad now. Actually, it's kind of been acting up again. The voices, because this voice is always with me, but it kind of changes its tune, so it kind of changes the things that it talks about and the delusions that it creates. It kind of changes the subject matter, but lately it's been going back to religion, even though I don't believe in that. But it doesn't matter what I believe, because it literally controls my mind and my reality, and it's like my God, I guess. But I don't say that in a good way. Like, I guess, like, imagine an evil, horrible God, and imagine that being the God of your reality, and that controls you like a puppet. That's kind of what it's like. But, yeah. That was my first psychotic break. It was like my first period of real psychosis. I mean, I was hearing this voice constantly, and I remember one time I was like frantically, almost ripping the pages of the Bible, frantically searching for verses that would disprove something that the voice was telling me, and that would kind of bring me some comfort and kind of assure me that I wasn't going to hell for fucking drinking a bottle of water. But I remember one time I was doing that, and I came upon a verse that I thought disproved what I was saying. And I was like, here, look, see, look, this verse proves that everything's okay, and that I'm okay, and that everything is going to be okay. And I remember the voice was like, are you sure about that? And I literally visually saw with my eyes, the words rearrange themselves on the page, just like the words kind of came up from the page and rearranged themselves and fell back into place. And it was still all the same words and all the same sentences, but the meaning was completely different, and like my reality completely shifted. I mean, I can't even explain to you what that's like. It's kind of like, imagine something earth-shattering, but then imagine that to the point where, like, imagine discovering that the sky has been pink this whole time. And you wake up one day and the sky is pink, and you find out that your entire life has been a lie, and your entire life you've been seeing the sky as blue, but it's been pink the entire time. Like, that kind of reality, like, mindfuck, that's what it was like. And I think that's the only instance I can think of where I had a visual hallucination in regards to my psychosis, but it was mainly like, you know, not being able to think straight, complete loss of reality, complete loss of function, you know, hearing this voice all of the time. So, yeah, it was so traumatizing that I will never be able to describe or explain how traumatizing it was. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if I had PTSD from it. You might maybe think that it's not really that bad, or not be able to understand how severe and torturous it was. Yeah, so that was what that was like for me. The reason why I decided to make a video about it was because this experience, I mean, it's shaped every aspect of my life. It's shaped who I am as a person, and it is, I mean, I continue to struggle with it. It's never gone away. Probably about every day, often multiple times a day, especially lately, the voice talks about that kind of thing again, and me not believing in Christianity anymore doesn't really make it a whole lot better, or easier to live with or ignore, or easier to shake off the delusion. I mean, the delusion is, it's never gone away. It's always there. It's kind of just whether or not I choose to acknowledge it and kind of act like it's true, you know? I live like I don't believe this delusion, but I do believe it, and it's just kind of a matter of how well I can cope with it and how well I can function with it, and just kind of ignoring it, I guess, trying not to think about it and putting it out of my mind. But yeah, it's kind of important to know that this happened to me, to understand a lot of the things that I go through, and it kind of set the pattern for every other psychotic break I've had, because they're all like that. They're all kind of like, they follow a particular model where it's like about a topic. So that time the topic was about religion and about, namely, going to hell. And, you know, there are other topics other times. So it kind of sets the standard for what my psychotic breaks are like. None of them have been as severe as that. The one I had one at the beginning of this year, back in March, that was close. That was like related to like my health, if that makes sense. And I'll talk more about that. Definitely. I'll definitely make a video about this, the most recent big psychotic episode. Thank you for listening. I know it was super depressing, and I'm really bad at explaining it, and you probably can't get a really good picture of what it was like because I suck at describing what it was like. But yeah, maybe just try to imagine it. Try to think about what it would feel like to be in that state. So yeah, thanks for watching.